Hey guys, so I know I said that I won't be analyzing any more decks from LCS 9, but seeing how LCS 10 was rescheduled to a later date, I figured I may as well analyze some more decks from the previous LCS, where I go through the 16 Dinosaur list from the event and map out the most common ratios of the core cards, most played hand traps and staples, and more. Now if you like these kind of analytical videos, then make sure to like and subscribe to see more. Now as you can see from this pie chart for the event, Dinos didn't have much of a representation for LCS 9. This was the first major event that took place using the new ban list, and I think a lot of people may have been afraid of the virtual world matchup. But as we saw from the top cut from the remote duel extravaganza hosted by Konami, we know that Dinos are still kicking strong. You should also check out my video on the most popular decks during each format of Master Rule 5, where Dinos make several appearances, and I'll link that video below. Sadly though, none of the Dino decks at LCS 9 made it to top 16, and from my understanding, none of the Dinos made it to top 32 either. Of the 16 Dino lists, 15 were pure, and there was one True King Dino list. I'm going to be providing the results throughout the video separated by the two builds. So starting with the deck size, most stuck to the standard 40 cards, although the one True King Dino list did play a 60 card variant. Now let's cover the most common ratio of the main deck core Dino monsters. So these cards were of course seen in all lists, and Ovi and Misk were played at 3 in all of the Pure and True King Dino lists, of course, no surprise there. So throughout the video, the top numbers will represent values for the Pure variant, and the bottom will represent the True King variant. Now Archosaur was played at 2 for all 15 Pure lists, although the 60 card True King list played it at 3. Archosaur is something you can special off of Misk, so playing it at 2 makes sense, and I suppose the True King list played it at 3 because the deck size of 60 was much larger. The most common ratio for Baby wasn't as a consensus as the others I mentioned so far, with 11 of the 15 Pure lists playing Baby at 2. The other lists, including the True King list, played Baby at 3. As for UCT, 87% of the Pure lists and also the one True King list played it at 2, with 2 Pure lists playing UCT at 1, and these 2 lists that played UCT at 1 happened to be the variant that played the Dragoon package. UCT is something you can special out from deck with double evolution pill, so not something you ever need more than 2 of. Now for these next 5 monsters, this is something that you will only see at just 1. Where it becomes a little interesting is Giant Rex, where 8 of the 15 Pure lists played it, whereas the remaining lists did not play it at all. It does provide a free body when it's banished off of double evolution pill or to special UCT from hand, but perhaps not necessary. Only one Pure list played Overtax, and the True King list played it as well. It's a card that used to see a lot of play before Archosaur came out, since it was a way of getting double evolution pill to hand. Nowadays, Archosaur just does a much easier job at that. And as for the Jirac Aeolo, only the True King list play this since they are looking to make Trish with it and then go into VFD. So now we can move on to the Dino spells and traps. Now 80% of the Pure list played Lost World at 3, but there were 2 decks that played it at just 1, which were the Dragoon list. There was one Pure list and the True King list that played Lost World at 2, and both of these lists main deck Mystic Mine, which could serve as a possible explanation for that. Fossil Dig and Double Evolution Pill were an absolute consensus in playing it at 3 and 2 respectively. Now as for Survival Zen, the lesser known Dino trap that can special Dino monsters from deck for every normal monster on the field destroyed by this card, and also you can banish this card from the grave to destroy a Dino monster you control and another monster your opponent controls. There were only 2 Pure lists that played this card and were both played in the side. I know Ryan Yu also played this card in the side in the Remote Duel Extravaganza event, which he came 5th place with Pure Dinos, and I'll link his deck profile on GrimYGO's channel down below. He did not play at LCS 9 though, so he's not part of the data for this particular video. So here's some other generic spells that are seen in Dino decks. Pot of Extravagance is the most common one that you typically expect in all of the decks, but there were actually 3 Pure lists that did not play it. These include those 2 Dragoon variants, since you of course don't want to banish Dragoon, and the other one was a list that played the Barrier Statue package with Reaper and Simord Bird of Sovereignty. Terraforming is pretty much a given in any deck with the field spell, although set rotation was definitely not as common, and you would of course only see it in lists that main deck Mystic Mine, which to be fair, Dinos do that pretty often. Now let's cover the extra deck monsters, starting with the most common ratios for some of the key extra deck monsters. Now for Dinos, you're going to see multiple copies of the key extra deck monsters because they generally play Pot of Extravagance and they want to make sure at least one of the copies survive the banishing cost. So Dolka was most commonly played at 2, with 7 of the 15 Pure lists doing so, and same with the one True King list. Now there were 5 lists that played it at 3 as well, and of course the 3 lists that did not play Extravagance played Dolka at just 1. Lagia, on the other hand, was actually most frequently played at just 1, despite the risk of the soul copy being banished from Extravagance, because while the effect can be strong, it doesn't come up nearly as much as Dolka, and you'd much rather set up Dolka instead. There were 2 pure lists that played Lagia at 2 though, and 2 that did not play Lagia at all. Link Karibo and Secure Garna were most frequently played at 2 as well, with 1 pure list even playing Link Karibo at 3. It's your starting play where you turn Archosaur into Link Karibo and then turn that into Secure Garna so that you can play your double evolution pill. So if you're playing Pot of Extravagance, then you're probably best off playing it at 2 each. Then we have some other extra deck monsters that are in most cases just played at 1. You have some generic Link monsters like Nightmare Phoenix and Unicorn for some spot removal, and of course, your staple rank 4 monsters like Abyss Dweller and Tornado Dragon, as you have access to easy level 4s like Ovi, Misk, and Giant Rex. Dino decks also all seem to play the Gamma package, so Lambda is a common occurrence, allowing you to activate Gamma from hand even when you control monsters, but it's nice to have a generic Link too as well, and you can bluff your opponent that you have Gamma as well when you summon Lambda. Some other extra deck monsters, Axis Kotaker was pretty common, being seen in 9 of the 15 pure lists to help push for game. Pentastag was seen in about half of the Dino lists. It allows a monster that it points to, in almost all cases your Ultimate Conductor, to do piercing damage, so when you attack over the Lost World tokens that you give to your opponent, you're going to be doing massive amount of damage. Cypher and Lord Omega was seen in about half of the list as well, since Dinos do play Gamma, and if you are able to resolve Gamma on your turn especially, then you get to punish your opponent extra hard and rip a card out of their hand until your standby phase rolls around. Also, Omega is something you can send off of Maximus if you are going against Dogmatica invoked as well. Baguzga was also seen in about 1/3 of the decks, another generic rank 4 monster that can prevent your opponent from activating their monster effects. Now for some other notable extra deck monsters but did not see much play, one is True King of all calamities. The True King list of course played it, and only 1 pure Dino list played VFT. To be honest though, I'm not sure what I was missing, but I wasn't quite sure how the pure list would have been able to summon VFT, considering that the list was not playing Aolo and did not seem to play any level 9s in the extra deck. As for Dragoon, I alluded to this earlier, but there were 2 pure lists that played the Dragoon package, so not very common. Then we have the Barrier Statue package with Reaper-Dachus and Simurgh, Bird of Sovereignty, where one list played them at 2 each because he was playing Extravagance, while the other played at just 1 each because Extravagance was not in that list. The point of the package is to use Reaper-Dachus to change the Dino monster it points to into a winged beast, and then link off the 2 for the Simurgh link. And in the end phase, special summon out the Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds to prevent your opponent from special summoning other than wind monsters. So a going first Dino list, which clearly was not too common for this event. Okay, so now let's go over some quick numbers regarding hand traps and backrow removal. Dinos do play a lot of hand traps, with a median number of 9 hand traps in the main and 4 hand traps in the side when you look at the 16 Dino list overall. It seems like the True King Dino list played more hand traps in the side than the pure list, although the True King list was a 60 card build after all. As for backrow hate, hardly any in the main for both pure and the True King list, and were more so played in the side as with most decks, with the True King list playing a pretty heavy lineup of 7 cards. The median for the 16 list combined was about 1 backrow hate card in the main and 4 in the side. And finally, we finish off as usual with the most common hand traps and staples played in the 16 Dino list. Gamma was seen in every Dino list and all played in the main as well, which is typically one of the more common hand traps played in the last few months. Ash was seen in all but 2 lists and played all in the main as well. Nibiru was still a pretty common occurrence, and at this point keep in mind that it was the very first event with the new ban list, so I'm sure people were expecting a ton of Virtual World. I would say right at this moment, Nibiru is not nearly as good as it once was due to the presence of a lot more control decks and the card being not that great versus Drytrons. Speaking of Drytrons, Droll is a must-have card against that matchup, and it's good against Dogmatica Invoke too, so saw a lot of play in this event, and I'm sure moving forward. Lancia was popular as well, being seen in half of the Dino list, great against Virtual World and ironically against Dinos themselves, as well as a myriad of other popular decks at the moment. Then we have Impermanence seen in 6 of the 16 lists. Now if you saw my top cut breakdown of LCS 9, you would notice that not one of those topping lists played Imperms. It's just not that good right now because it's not great against Virtual World or Eldritch decks, so you'll probably see it being played less for now. Skullmeister was only seen in a quarter of the list, but I suspect this and or Ghost Spell would start seeing more play nowadays because it is very good against popular decks like Drytron and Eldritch. The remaining cards honestly weren't that frequent, like DD Crow, No Material, and Ghost Reaper, which do have their own unique utility. Lastly, let's cover the most commonly played staples, your typical side deck cards for the most part. Tied for first place is Cosmic Cyclone and Harpy's Feather Duster, which generally take the top spots each time I do these videos. Cosmic is good against Eldritch cards, but also against Virtual World where you banish your trap as well. Mystic Mine is pretty common in Dinos, and a lot of lists definitely still main deck this card, although I don't think it's as good as it was before when we had more combo decks like Dragon Link and Infernoble Knight dominating the format. Call by the Grave was seen in 9 decks as well, although most of them all in the side. Same goes for Red Reboot, as Dinos are capable of OTKing, and Red Reboot is a great card right now because of the heavy trap format, with a lot of decks playing powerful traps like Ice Dragon's Prison, Torrential Tribute, as well as your Eldritch traps. Lastly, we're just going to cover 3 more, as the remaining staples after that were all played in the same but lesser amounts. So we have Forbidden Droplets seen in half of the Dino list, with half main decking and the other half siding this card. Did not see much play in previous formats, but definitely starting to make a return, especially with Drytron's bringing out Vanity's Ruler. Now with Dogoran, I was not sure whether to technically include this here as a staple since it's something Dinos play specifically, but I mean, I thought it'd be helpful to know that half of the Dino list did play this card, with several main decking it. Lastly, we also have Lightning Storm that saw play in half of the Dino list. Certainly a powerful card, but I think it's a toss-up between this and Evenly Matched at the moment, both having their own unique utility. Alright guys, so that's it for the analysis of the 16 Dino list from LCS 9. Hope you found this helpful to compare your ratios and hand trap and staple lineup with other players' lists. That's it for me guys, take care.